So now I'm going to begin. Welcome to the Art of Pawsing with me, Amanda Weller. This is the show where I get to chat with inspiring people, and tonight I'm just delighted to be chatting with Beverley Webb. Beverley likes to open conversations that we often try to avoid. She is a recovery practitioner and wellness mentor for overcoming stress, trauma, and abuse. She's an accredited specialist practitioner with the chrysalis effect, offering recovery from chronic illness. And together with her own lived experience, she specializes in trauma-informed care. During the last year, she's won several awards in recognition of the work she does with her clients, her community work, and in raising awareness as a speaker, and being proactive in the education and raising awareness of the long-term effects of adverse child experiences, which are known as ACEs. So it's my very great pleasure to welcome Beverley to my show. Welcome.
Hello, Amanda, and thank you for inviting me.
Oh, I'm so delighted. I'm really so delighted to have you here and to have the chance to really have a good chat about all of this. We met a few years ago now, didn't we? And
nearly 2 years.
A couple of years ago,
yes.
And then you came on to Brooklands Radio, but I wasn't presenting the show that you came on. And when I listened to it again, there was something you said, which I won't reveal right now, but we'll come back to, that I just thought, oh my goodness, I talk about this kind of stuff the whole time, and I've never thought about that. And it was a light bulb moment for me, and I just thought I would love to have you on the show to be able to chat about all these kinds of things. So, first of all, where did your sort of love of delving into language and how powerful our use of it can be, both positive and negative? How did that all sort of evolve for you?
Well, it evolved naturally for me from childhood, and most of us, that's, from childhood, it's when we're learning about language, when we're learning about communication, and we listen a lot as children, and that's how we learn. However, we also take in the messages around us as children, because adults have a habit of talking about us, around us, or at us.
Yes, so right. So right.
As children, they don't actually speak to us, but we pick up the language. So, for instance, I was what we would classify a looked after child. I was brought up in care on and off most of my childhood. But I wasn't a child that was living in care, or any child that goes into care. Suddenly you're a kid from care. And you're spoken about in a certain way, but there's a certain way that it's said as if, oh, you're a kid from care. But I never asked to be there. So that's where the importance of language naturally evolved from there. And it's something I've gone into my adulthood, and it's something that I'm very aware of, and I hear all the time.
It's so true, isn't it? Because once your antenna are tuned in, you pick it up. You are so aware of the little nuances that can have maybe not have any meaning, but are absorbed as having a particular meaning, or maybe do have meaning. It's a multi-layered, complicated thing, actually, isn't it?
Absolutely. And also in communication, we use these different words, which is great to help us understand. And they then sometimes become labels, which can become part of judgmental. So when we're talking about behaviour, so if we're talking about challenging behaviour, as we know, challenging behaviour often comes out because that person's unable to use their voice and vocalise how they're feeling, so it will come out in their actions. But then it can quite quickly become bad behaviour. And then it's telling that person they're bad. But are they? So it's the narrative that we choose sometimes.
And it's this question of choice that I think is so interesting. I mean, in my client work with, and in daily life, I have to say as well, I do find myself talking about language sometimes quite a lot. and because I'm just so aware that there are so many simple little things that once we know about them, we can choose to use them. And they actually are transformational. They have a transformational potential, both internally for the user, but also for the recipients of whatever's being said, other people around.
Absolutely. And the thing is, we can't always in language get it right. We're human beings. And what I'm saying, maybe to you, may not be received as well by you. But if we look at that example that you were talking about when I spoke on the radio.
Yeah, let's talk about that. That's
So
okay.
That's a prime example.
Oh, I just honestly, absolute gift. So may I? So when I was,
Please do.
Okay, so as I was listening to your very lovely chat, this one thing really just leapt out at me. And you gave the example of suggesting that people say thank you rather than sorry. Now, as Brits, sorry just trips off the tongue the whole time anyway, doesn't it? You can't do anything without a stream of sorries in any situation you can think of. And I just think this is magic. So talk to me about that.
As you say, we say sorry an awful lot. And if we're a person that's really suffering with our own self-confidence and our own self-talk, sorry becomes really easy. Oh, sorry about that. Sorry. But for instance, if we're late, we go rushing into that meeting. I'm so sorry I'm late. And because we've said sorry, we're now backfooting. This happened, that happened. And we're rushing in. I'm so sorry. And straight away, the others are half listening because it's too many sorries. But we all do it. So I work with my clients and I try and do it myself as much as possible as well. And when I walk in, take a breath. Thank you for waiting for me. I had some trouble coming along, but thank you. You've changed it completely. You've changed your whole demeanour. The people that are waiting for you, the fact that you said thank you is acknowledging them more than saying sorry, sorry, sorry. And the energy, so you're starting in a different way.
Totally different. And you, as you say, as the person saying this, you're holding your space, aren't you? You're holding a confident space or your own space. You're respecting your own space, but also respecting the space you're entering as well.
Absolutely. So you've communicated on a level that brings you both together. But as soon as you start saying sorry, 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 well, you wouldn't necessarily always say it 3 times, but if you're saying I'm sorry, but actually changing it round to thank you, you're both starting off on an equal level and it makes both of you feel good. And that is a great platform to then go from rather than feeling, oh, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
But there's lots of different ways we do it. So there's another way, for instance, the way we talk. So this happened to me myself last week. We were talking about colours and it was within a group environment on one of my wellness groups. So we were talking about colours we didn't like. So I picked up brown. And then the next thing was, why don't you like brown? Because brown makes me feel, and that's how we start.
Mm-hmm.
Then when I was out walking on Sunday, I was having an amazing walk outside in the countryside. It was just fantastic. And one of the things I love is trees. And the different barks were just amazing. And they were standing there. And as I went to touch this bark, I realised, oh, it's brown. And straight away, that made me rethink brown. So instead of thinking, oh, I don't like brown, now actually I can relate it to something I like. See how I've changed the energy there? And even in my conversation, if someone says, what do you think of brown? Now I will say, actually, brown reminds me of trees. And I love trees.
Yes. And actually a freshly ploughed field or something, that rich, colour of the soil. Wonderful. That's just a gift if you happen to be walking, along a path beside a field that's just been ploughed. You have that, don't you? That's the magic of the richness of that. So yes, how really, really interesting. The one that I often illustrate and talk about is, and it's always coming from a good intention, is if somebody wants to show gratitude to somebody else, or and they say thank you, the response back is often no problem. But the brain hangs on to the word problem. Actually, a more positive vibe would be, that's an absolute pleasure. Totally different, isn't it?
Absolutely. And that's the thing. It's how the body responds or the brain responds. And when we're talking about trauma, it's those little nuances in conversation that we pick up. And as you say, no problem. We're hearing the word problem.
Yep. Yeah.
So and even when we have a compliment.
Sorry.
So when we have a compliment, somebody gives you a compliment, but how many times do you say, oh yeah, but I got it, I've had it for ages.
It's that brushing aside, isn't it?
When somebody gives you a compliment, thank you.
That's a very hard one for so many people. It's something I've had to learn actually as well. That's not something that came easily at all. And that still was that moment of, before the response I want to give pops out, has to be encouraged sometimes. It's all a work in progress, isn't it? It doesn't happen overnight, but you can choose to try and use language that is beneficial, because you can sometimes as well, the word should is something that also
should. If I ask anybody what that means to them, especially when I'm first working with clients, whether it be one-to-one or in a group, and that word should comes up, the first thing I say to them is, so if we look at should on its own, what does that say to you? And then out comes guilt, expectation, shame. I should have done that. Or what should you have done in place? Can you hear that straight away? It's put us on the back foot. We're feeling guilty. What should we have done?
With should as well, I sometimes get people to tune into a phrase that where they've used the word should, and just to see how it feels in the body. And it always feels heavy and uncomfortable. And actually, I think it's because where should is involved, actually the need is there to question whether it's something you actually want, or whether it's something that you've just absorbed as a thing that is actually somebody else's, or that you've just kind of, I don't know, you've just taken on, but it's not actually what you want. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And how many times, it's getting that balance, always the balance, but how many times do we think of how other people are going to think of us and how we're going to be received, rather than, are we happy with this? What do I need? Because when we consider what we need, first of all, we can only control us. We can't control other people. And it doesn't matter. You can look at something, I can look at something in two different ways, but it's both of our truth. So how will I know how you're going to receive something? I really don't know. No. And if you don't see it in the same way of me, instead of me saying sorry, how about thank you, Amanda, for I hadn't thought about it that way.
Yeah, that's great to have another viewpoint. Not sure I agree with you, but
there's the word but.
Yes.
Another little word. But I love you, but straight away when you hear that little word, I don't know about you, I'm now on the defensive.
Yeah, it's very uncomfortable.
I'm now on defensive. Whereas we can change that little word but for another one. However.
Softer.
Yes. Yeah. And there are occasions that we need to use buts, but whenever I do, like now, I've just said it quickly. Whenever I go to use it, especially when I'm writing, that's the one I think, do I need to leave that in there? So anyone listening, I'm not expecting anybody to go around and say, oh, I can't use these words, but it is really thinking about what words are you're happy with, because as you said, how do they feel? And the reason why it's so important is, as you know, with our conscious thinking, that's only 20% of what we are thinking subconsciously, and subconsciously it's 80% of what we do. So if consciously we're saying words in a way that doesn't make us feel good, then that's only going to compound what we're talking to ourselves subconsciously, going to compound it more. So until we become consciously aware of our language, how we're speaking to ourselves and communicating, that's only then can we start looking at our subconscious messages. And they're the little voices that often are our little demons, for want of a better word.
But we also have our internal traffic lights, which are a good guide as well, aren't they? That's so. It's yes. We could chat for hours, couldn't we?
Oh. I'm very conscious of not going on a tangent because.
Oh, you've done very well. I do want you to go off on a tangent now. I'd love to ask you something different. What do you do? As this is the art of pausing. How do you pause, Beverley?
Oh, well, one of the best ways of pausing for me is walking.
And
when I say walking, very much thinking about what's right for me on that day. And that's what's great about walking, because there are some days that you think, I only want to walk for about 15, 20 minutes, and that's fine. And other times, like this weekend, I walked for 3.5 hours.
Oh,
and
lovely.
It was fantastic. So I love that choice. And even in different weathers, yes, there are some times when you think, oh, it's raining. And then other times it's like, I don't care. This is fantastic. I'm outside in the fresh air. It's raining and I'm going to enjoy it. So that's my real pause. And if I have a choice, beach or green woods. Ooh, that's lovely to have that choice. And I enjoy having that choice, because different days, different moods. Yes, either one.
How amazing. That's quite some choice that's available to you. Beautiful. So enjoyed chatting with you. Thank you so much for joining me. You're a wealth of inspiration, and I'm just delighted that you were here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you for inviting me.
We'll have to do another one.
Yes, absolutely.
I'll see you soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.